At Gen Con, we went to the main game hall and interviewed Sam, a player from Columbus, Ohio, competing in a single elimination modern RCQ tournament. In this video, we asked Sam about his mono black control deck that runs Cabal Coffers and the One Ring. Let's see what this deck is all about.
They show up and they're like, oh, what's going on here? A bunch of people are gathering in a room watching a couple of people play with cardboard, you know?
I think it's a lot of fun getting to meet the people in person, play a bunch of events.
Never touched this deck ever.
I would just break it down with the gameplay. The gameplay's fun.
We're back, baby.
I'm playing this deck this weekend, partly because I'm loaning my main deck to a friend to also play, but also I have had Cabal Coffers as a deck archetype together for a little while now. I really like it, and among decks I have, I feel like it utilizes new cards like Orcish Bowmasters in the One Ring most effectively. I am Sam. I am playing Mono Black Coffers Control, and I was just playing in the RCQ Modern event at Indianapolis at Gen Con. So in summary, the deck is a control deck. It is more akin to tap-out control like Tron, where you're trying to present large cards that must be answered by an opponent lest they take over the game. It also has a mid-range plan with cards like Thoughtseize and Orcish Bowmasters that allow it to prolong the game until it can get its mana engine set up and then take over. So the mana base, as you can guess, focused mainly around Cabal Coffers. The combo being Cabal Coffers with Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth in play, nets you mana starting on turn 4. The rest of the mana base is either swamps or utility lands, and there's 1 or 2 fetch lands to help enable Revolt for Fatal Push. So the utility lands that I run include Blast Zone, which kind of help clean up, almost like having an engineered explosives effect in the main deck. I run several copies of both Field of Ruin and Demolition Field to help disrupt greedy mana bases. And there's a handful of other cards, Castle Locthwain to draw cards when you're running low, and then a single copy of Takenuma, the Abandoned Mire, the Kamigawa channel land, which can help you rebuy your threats, notably Karn or other big impact creatures once they've been dealt with already. So the creature count in this deck is actually fairly light. I've mentioned Orcish Bowmasters before, and it really does shine quite well in this deck, having a low mana creature that is able to help stabilize the board and slow down the game is really key. The other creatures I am running in the main deck are 2 Archon of Cruelty, which has fallen out of favor in a lot of traditional Coffers lists, but I quite like it as it is a way to turn the corner and start closing out the game quite quickly, and it's all of that in a single card. So the non-creature cards, like I mentioned, is well, it's really quite a smattering, but it does include some of those mid-range cards, a lot of removal. Things like Fatal Push, Bloodchief Thirst, and the March of Wretched Sorrow to help you keep the board clear. There are the Thoughtseize effects, which typically vary between Thoughtseize or Inquisition of Kozilek. The card Cabal Coffers doesn't do very much without Urborg in play. So to find those, you have just raw card draw like Night's Whisper, and you have a tutor effect in Profane Tutor, which is suspended on turn 2, it comes off on turn 4, you can get your mana assembled and just go from there. Karn the Great Creator is really important to the deck. Having access to a suite of silver bullet cards in your sideboard to make polarizing matchups a little bit more winnable is quite important, as well as Karn's static ability shuts off a lot of opponents' artifacts. It plays really well with the Power Stone tokens from Cityscape Leveler, and it also is very important against shutting off other opponents' copies of the One Ring. So the One Ring is, in my opinion, the best card in Modern right now. For however long it lasts. It feels foolish not to be playing them, especially in a deck where I can, the main goal of the deck is to accelerate on mana starting on turn 4. So being able to play the One Ring as well as other cards in the same turn using Cabal Coffers is really quite important. So the sideboard consists of 10 artifacts for Karn to go grab. They're all unique, ranging from hate pieces to artifact enchantment removal to graveyard removal. The remaining 5 cards are 3 Break the Ice, which can help against Tron or any deck that is really running Urza Saga, and 2 Collective Brutality, which is primarily for burn, as it's a really tough matchup. You're trying to stabilize by turn 4, and they can just have you dead well before then. In the sideboard, there are a couple of big creatures. Wormcoil has been a tried and true classic in Karn sideboards, and it's here as well. Other finishers in the sideboard include Sundering Titan, and it is mainly for mana disruption. If you feel like you have the game locked up, fetch that up. If they remove it, they lose more lands. And then the last one is Cityscape Leveler, which it is a Karn Tutor target that is a large body that closes game, and it also has a really important cast trigger that lets you remove a problematic non-land permanent. In games that I've won, I find I am winning normally with one of those 3 creatures that Karn can get. Very occasionally, there is the Karn and Liquimetal Coating lock, and so it can lock the game down, essentially removing your opponents from being able to play any spells, which usually prompts a concession, but that's not winning the game. It is either that or swinging with Archon attacks or even with Bowmaster attacks is primarily how the games are won. Cabal Coffers' best matchup, at least with the build that I currently have set up, is likely Hammer Time. Now that it's fallen off, it's not quite as popular, so you don't see it as much, but your removal suite lines up very beautifully with almost all of their threats that they assembled. Being able to have access to Karn's static ability to prevent hammers from being cheated on in more than one way is really quite nice. And having access to Blast Zone in the main deck is another way to help shore up the matchup when it otherwise might be difficult. The one deck that I really don't enjoy seeing is the 4-color deck, the Money Pile deck with Omnath, Red and 6, Teferi, now the Ring and Delighted Halfling as well. They're just able to outpace me on cards. They have a better mid-range plan than I can, and eventually that can go over the top of any cards I pull out of the sideboard with Karn, or even if I stumble getting the mana engine set up, it's very punishing. This was a viable deck before the One Ring, and I believe it will be a viable deck after the One Ring. We'll certainly lose a good amount of percentage points, still has access to a lot of really new powerful cards like Orcish Bowmasters, and any new either black or colorless card that is printed that has a strong potent effect in the modern format will likely be tested out in Coffers in the future. I like playing the deck because I really like playing big mana Karn decks. Having access to an array of silver bullet cards in your sideboard makes a lot of polarizing matchups feel quite winnable. So having access to those main deck is something that I quite like. I also enjoy the mid-range aspect. I've played a lot of Death Shadow in my days, and Thoughtseize is a card very near and dear to my heart. So being able to play the large game-ending threats with the mid-range spell package really just speaks to how I like to play a game of Magic.
That's all for this video. Sam ended up making the top 8 before being eliminated from the tournament. We'd like to thank him for being in this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like, share, and comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you again.